Good evening, this is Samuel, and I'm back again with another video on ENTJs. The topic of this one is becoming a benevolent dictator. If we look historically at a lot of very successful ENTJs, usually military leaders or heads of state, we can often see a very kind of a nice rise to prominence, or a rise to power, and then occupying that position, quote unquote, at the top for a while, and then oftentimes something happens internally, either a betrayal by those that they expected to follow them, or their support just suddenly disappears and they're left all alone. Basically, getting Julius Ceasered would be my top example. And so the purpose of this video is how to avoid that, or what are some good practices to avoid that. And this can also make your leadership more effective. So overall, ENTJs were known for being very blunt, very forward, very logical, which is, it's fine, it's effective, it works. But to sharpen that blade a little bit more, I highly recommend embracing tact as a leadership trait. And these next few points go underneath that umbrella of embracing tact in the way that you carry yourself and in the way that you handle your teammates or subordinates. So you want to use brutal methods or even cruelty, if necessary, very sparingly. If you're an individual who uses the most brutal method with a high degree of frequency, then people around you are going to become very nervous. They're going to expect that you may soon turn that on them. It's something that can drive a message, and it's something that will get things done, absolutely, but use it with a high degree of caution and intent, and don't use it frequently. So to speak, you may have to publicly humiliate someone. This is something that I recommend rarely ever doing, especially not if this is someone who you want to be on your side and to assist you with something. Additionally, Archetype, in my estimation, is often capable of making the hard calls, the hard decisions, and doing what is necessary. We'll do a lot of things that are absolutely necessary and need to be done, and we'll make calls that need to happen, even when there are going to be sacrifices because of that. So, using the archetype of the general on a battlefield, if you occupy that kind of position, you are going to make decisions that will get people killed. But at the end of the day, you still have to make those decisions, and you have to not quite be at peace with it, but you have to be able to make that decision and keep moving forward. So when you make a call out of, and you're doing what is necessary, what has to be done, don't make that decision with a callous attitude or mindset. Take a bit of time to understand what you're asking of people and give it the due amount of seriousness and consideration that it deserves, and show people that you're not making that decision lightly, that you understand, like, look, I'm asking a lot out of you. I get it, but this has to be done. We have to get this accomplished, or this bad thing will happen. But I understand what it is that I'm asking you to do. That'll make them more likely to go ahead and do it. And for those people who are observing that situation, you're not going to win everyone over. It's just not going to happen. But you will have much more of the majority aligned with you, despite having made that difficult call and taken losses, whatever they may be. Additionally, when someone wants to speak or to bring a point to your attention or they disagree, actually hear them out and listen to what they have to say when possible. Sometimes circumstances don't allow it. But hear them out, listen to what they have to say. Show them and the people around you that you have heard it and that you understand it. I highly recommend looking into Chris Voss or the Black Swan Group. You can find that content here on YouTube as well. What you should try and do is solicit a "that's right" out of them. A confirmation that what they've brought forward to your attention, that you understand it, and that you have that understanding. In doing so, you're giving people a level of confidence, and it'll help to build trust with them. Even if you don't do what they're, even if you have to make a call different from what they might like, just being heard out and understood is going to go a long way. And with that same line of thought, whenever possible, try to ensure that you're giving people the option to save face or to save their pride publicly. So, for example, if you have to criticize someone, preferably do it in private, don't do it publicly. If you get into an argument with someone publicly, or if they accidentally make an ass out of them, give them that outreached hand so that they can save their pride, so that they can save face. Once again, this is something that will help to foster trust in you, and it will also go a long way towards presenting prolonged resentment. They may not take that outstretched hand. They may not take that option to save face, but also for those other people who may be watching and observing it, they're going to see it, and they're going to appreciate it. Hopefully they'll appreciate it. And that'll go a long way as well with them. Like, oh, hey, he tried to give you a hand, dude. He tried to give you a way out. You were too fucking stupid or stubborn to take it. That then shifts the frame of, how should I put it? Not necessarily the frame of wrongdoing, but the frame of wrongdoing or the frame of moral superiority. You then have that frame of the moral superiority. They then have that frame of wrongdoing or pettiness, hopefully, if done well. What I've just laid out are all very reactive or defensive. To an extent, it is proactive, but it's not really proactive. It's very much maintaining that homeostasis. It's preventing things from occurring in the first place or reacting to it. These next points that I'm going to bring up towards becoming a benevolent dictator are very much more proactive. So, number one, if you're building a team or if you have subordinates or peers, developing a good understanding of those individuals. So using that mental tool of a spreadsheet, you should ideally have a few rows dedicated towards understanding people at a deeper level, what motivates them, what is their composition of a moral compass, what do they find morally wrong, do they have much of a moral compass, what's their integrity level, etc. Even if you ask them directly, like, hey, what motivates you, what are your goals, what are your dreams or aspirations, or just openly asking them, hey, what kinds of, you may have to rephrase this to the context, but asking them what kind of things do you find just irreprehensible and totally unforgivable, or what's important to you value-wise. Even flat out asking that can go a long way. And so when you develop that understanding of a person, you can then more effectively or more appropriately really deploy them. So viewing other people as a system, an ally, an asset, or a tool, having that understanding of how this person works and in what situations they're going to work the best can make you much more effective at deploying them appropriately, and also preventing unnecessary conflicts from arising. So you're not asking someone to do something that goes against their motivations, what they want, and their moral compass. Ensuring that you give the appropriate task to the appropriate type of person can really go a long way. Additionally, you want to treat your people, tools, allies, assets, however you view them, you want to treat them well. So if you're a carpenter and you have a like some kind of a saw or wood carving tools, keeping an eye on them, making sure that they're well taken care of, kept sharp, oiled, etc., is going to make sure that that tool continues to work for you. So applying this to people, making sure that you sharpen them, that they're being mentored and developed, appropriate to their goals or aspirations, that should ideally be aligned with yours, making sure that their emotional and mental states are being checked in on and handled appropriately. If someone's going through a difficult experience, like a legitimately difficult experience, like the death of a loved one or something, giving them the appropriate kind and method of attention. Maybe that means a bit of your time just to hear them talk, or whatever the hell it is you have to do, or taking them off the chessboard of the playing field for a bit, saying like, hey, look, you're going through a hard time, you're not at your best right now, okay? I want you to focus on yourself for a bit, so that way you can come back out and help the rest of the team, okay? Having those kinds of check-ins and giving that maintenance to the people under your care, one, it's going to build a lot of loyalty. Hopefully it'll help to build a greater sense of loyalty to you because, hey, this person, they feel that you really care about them. You do, but in true ENTJ fashion, it may be more that you care about how they perform for you. But you still care about them. And also, you're not going to, if you pick up a tool that has a crack in it or that has not been appropriately maintained, and you try to use it, there's a good chance it could break and it could fail you midway through whatever project you're working on. So if you go to use a person who's not in the best headspace, emotionally, mentally, skill-wise, whatever, there's a good chance that they will fail to do what you need them to do, or even if they do succeed in doing what you need them to go ahead and do for you, they may not be any use to you after that, and then you're out of that tool, and you put all this time into mentoring and developing this individual. That's all now down the drain. Other people are going to see how you handled this person, and that you were that boss who burned them the fuck out. Everyone else is going to be trying to get off that ship, or Julius Caesar you promptly, as they should. And last but not least in the slightest is a practice that I think will go a long way. So, in line with our type, often ENTJs will make a emotional argument, will often say, this is what needs to be done, and this is why, very much facts above the board, etc., which is effective, but to make it even more effective, if you take up the practice of emoting intentionally, not exactly in a manipulative, you're fake crying way, but if you at first practice recognizing that you may have an emotion at a given situation, and then putting that slightly more on display than you usually do with some kind of intent. For example, if you have an individual who is not known for crying, let's say. So imagine, the stereotypical manly man who doesn't cry. We all know the stereotype, right? So if you take this individual, and then a loved one dies, like let's say a parent dies, or their pet, their beloved dog, or what have you, dies, and then they go to that funeral or procession, and you just see tears streaming down their face. Maybe they're not outright sobbing, but they've got that moist eye, tears coming down. This individual who is now emoting conveys so much more significance and attention than someone who breaks down crying over the slightest thing. If you're the person who cries over spilt milk, even when you cry in a more serious situation, it's not as noticeable. People aren't going to be carried by that. They're not going to give that as much attention as they will someone who doesn't cry all that much. Likewise, if you're the sort of person who is usually very stoic, very serious, very to the point, logical, etc., and you go to rally people, trying to focus in on, and if you legitimately have some passion tied to it, if you then start to speak with a level of passion and conviction and tossing a little bit of emotion into your logical argument, that can rally people even more. Doing that kind of thing, in my estimation, can electrify what you're trying to convey. So, our top two functions, personality-wise, extroverted thinking and introverted feeling. So if you primarily operate on the extroverted thinking, you're thinking about the outside world and systems, etc., but if you then tap into what you're feeling internally, which you're not quite as good at that, but if you practice it and you tap into that, in my estimation, I believe that ENTJs, when we really figure out our emotions, I think we have the capability of utilizing them to rally people to our cause or our objective. People often describe that ENTJs have a vibe, or we tend to have a level of charisma. So if you can figure out a handful of emotions that you can display intently but also authentically in the appropriate situation, you can absolutely use that to rally people to your cause. As well, I highly recommend, as soon as you're done with this video, just look up the Opus Mutiny. It's a speech by Alexander the Great. This is a great method to also use in last-ditch attempt. People are ready to leave you behind and mutiny or turn on you. Effectively having a logical argument, but effectively emoting at the same time can save your bacon in the last second. So I highly recommend practicing that above all else. So, with that in mind, thank you very much for watching the video and listening to my recommendations. If you have any others or any points of disagreement, comment them down below. Like, subscribe, ring the bell to make sure you get notified when I put out other videos. Additionally, once again, I have a link down below that will be to Aerial Resupply. It's a really neat startup coffee company. It's being done by a connection of mine. I've tried the Moab coffee. It's smooth, it's double caffeinated, it's awesome. They have a few other types, K-cups, whole beans, as well as ground coffee. Click on the link below, you can get 10% off. Give it a try. I'm sure you'll love it. And